Welcome back to the deep dive.
Yes.
If you've been trying to get a single snapshot of how fragmented the world is right now, politically, economically, look no further.
Exactly. The sources we have in front of us today, they paint a very complicated picture.
They really do. We're talking about these huge, high-stakes movements all happening at once. You've got fragile ceasefires, a massive, almost existential debate on security in Europe, and these huge diplomatic shifts from Beijing to Delhi.
And that's our mission today. We're not just reading headlines. We need to connect these things that seem, totally separate.
Right.
We have reports out of Gaza, fallout from the NATO meeting in Brussels. We're tracking Putin's trips to New Delhi. Even some really strange visuals from the U.S. Virgin Islands. The goal here is to help you see how Europe's frustration is connected to Russia's pivot to Asia and how all of that impacts, say, diplomacy in the Middle East.
Okay, so let's start unpacking that then. The heart of it all really seems to be Ukraine and this growing friction over European security.
It is. And we have to start with the grim reality on the ground. Despite those U.S.-led peace talks in Moscow, there is just no visible progress toward ending the war.
And Moscow's pushing the opposite narrative, right? They're projecting strength.
Complete strength. We just saw Putin filmed in army fatigues, at a command post. His commanders are claiming they've taken the strategic city of Pskov.
Now, fighting is still going on there, I understand.
It is. It's disputed. But the message is what matters. The message is Russia is advancing.
And that's not just talk. The numbers back it up. Our sources say Russian forces seized over 700 square kilometers. That's what, 270 square miles in November alone.
And now control 19.3% of Ukraine. But here's the diplomatic shift that is really setting off alarm bells in Europe.
The talks with Washington.
Exactly. The Kremlin is saying Putin is ready to meet with Americans as many times as needed.
So as that door seems to be cracking open, the one with Europe feels like it's slamming shut.
That is the rift, and Putin is playing it up, even accusing European nations of obstructing peace. But at the same time, even as he's making these overtures to the U.S., he was recorded saying he's, quote, ready for war.
It's a calculated ambiguity.
Completely. It's designed to create maximum confusion and disunity in the West.
And that disunity was, it was on full display at the NATO foreign ministers meeting in Brussels.
Right.
The takeaway wasn't unity, it was alarm. A sense of being excluded.
The irony is just painful. You have the Secretary General, Mark Rutte, specifically praising President Trump.
Calling him the only person in the whole world who was able to break the deadlock.
Right. When the head of NATO is saying that about a non-EU figure, about a crisis on Europe's own soil, it tells you everything about Europe's reliance on the U.S., and now its frustration with it.
I'm trying to figure that out. If Rutte is praising the U.S. for breaking a deadlock, doesn't that just undermine Europe's whole push for its own, strategic autonomy?
That's a contradiction.
It's like they're saying, thanks for fixing this, but why weren't we in the room?
That's it, exactly. And leaders are feeling actively humiliated by it.
Humiliate, that's a strong word.
It is. The former Lithuanian foreign minister, Gabrielius Landsbergis, he used that exact word. He said the lack of a European presence at those talks was dangerous and humiliating.
Because it's their security on the line.
Their security. And they're on the sidelines, and the Estonians are echoing this. Margus Chechnya, their foreign minister, was blunt. He said Europe has to decide its own path.
Basically, we can't let Putin or the U.S. decide for us.
Not anymore. It's a very public, very powerful call for Europe to finally get serious about its own defense because relying on U.S. political cycles just isn't working.
But getting serious requires a colossal amount of money. Which brings us to this incredibly complex debate over the frozen Russian assets. The European Commission has this proposal for a $100 billion loan. How is that even supposed to work?
Okay, so it's a really clever but also legally tricky mechanism. The idea is not to just seize the $100 billion worth of assets.
Right, because that's legally fraught.
Very. Instead, they want to use the assets as collateral for an immediate loan to Kyiv. The money gets to Ukraine now.
And the loan gets paid back. How?
Well, the idea is that Russia would technically pay it back if, and it's a big if, they agree to pay war reparations.
So if Russia pays up, the loan is cleared. If they don't, then the frozen assets are used to repay the creditors.
You've got it. It's a way to get the funding moving without, directly breaking international law on sovereign property. But there's a huge problem. Belgium, because that's where most of the assets are actually held.
Right.
And their foreign minister, Maxime Prévost, is basically saying, look, we're not taking on all the risk here.
They're worried about Russia suing them.
Of course. Russia could take them to international court, claim this is illegal expropriation, and if they win, Belgium could be on the hook for billions. This has never been done before. It's a massive legal precedent, and nobody wants to be the one left holding the bag.
So while Europe is tied in these knots, Russia is pivoting hard to the east, to the global south, trying to make a complete mockery of Western isolation efforts.
And Putin's recent trip to India is the centerpiece of that strategy.
It's a huge statement.
It's a statement that isolation has failed. I mean, you look at India, it's the world's fastest growing major economy, third largest oil consumer. It's the perfect partner for Russia to cement this multipolar world they're always talking about.
And the numbers on the economic side are just wild.
Mm-hmm.
Russian oil went from, what, 2.5% of India's imports before the war?
To 35%.
35%, just driven by those sanctions and the price discount.
It's a fundamental restructuring of their energy supply. And of course, Washington noticed, you'll remember the Trump administration hit them with that extra 25% tariff on Indian goods.
Directly linking the oil purchases to funding Russia's war.
Explicitly. So India is walking this incredible tightrope, balancing the need for cheap energy for 1.45 billion people against the real threat of U.S. trade penalties.
So if the U.S. tariffs are already making Indian orders drop, what is Russia offering that's so valuable?
Two things. Energy security, which we've mentioned, and defense reliability. Defense is huge. India is expecting to buy more of Russia's state-of-the-art fighter jets, and this is critical. The S-400 air defense system.
Which is one of the best in the world.
One of the best. And it's not something you can just go out and buy from a Western partner tomorrow. It's a core piece of their strategic defense.
So even with a trade imbalance that's like $68 billion in Russia's favor, India is prioritizing this. They're choosing immediate security over better trade access with the West.
They are, but they're also pushing Russia hard for better access for their own goods. Pharma, agriculture, and they need long-term fertilizer supplies. It's a deeply pragmatic relationship.
And this India relationship feeds directly into Russia's no-limits partnership with China. I think we all remember that picture of Putin, Modi, and Xi Jinping smiling together.
Which puts someone like French President Emmanuel Macron in a very, very difficult position.
Right, his trip to Beijing. A high-wire act, if there ever was one.
You can just feel Europe's desperation in that visit. On the one hand, he's begging Xi to use China's decisive capacity to push Russia towards a ceasefire.
Asking the one superpower that hasn't condemned the invasion to broker a peace.
A peace that Europe itself was shut out of discussing. And at the same time, Macron is also pushing for economic rebalancing.
Because Europe's trade deficit with China is... What was the number?
306 billion euros last year alone. It's a staggering figure.
So that deficit gives Xi all the leverage.
All of it. Macron is basically asking China to give up its leverage over its key energy partner, Russia, while also demanding China fix an economic imbalance that benefits them. It just shows how fragmented Europe's own strategy is.
It's clear that this great power competition is driving everything. Let's pivot now to another point of extreme fragility, the Middle East and this very shaky ceasefire in Gaza.
Precarious is the word. The truce is technically holding, but both sides, Israel and Hamas, are accusing each other of violations. It could all fall apart at any moment.
And we have a specific incident that shows just how tense it is. An Israeli airstrike in Khan Yunis.
Right. Israel said it was retaliation for an attack on IDF troops that 5 soldiers were injured.
Yeah, but the Gaza authorities have a completely different story.
They do. They claim the strike hit a tent that was sheltering displaced Palestinians and that 5 people were killed. These immediate conflicting reports just show you how volatile it all is.
And the path forward seems so difficult. What's the latest on the hostage situation?
Well, Israel did receive and identify the remains of a Thai national, Suthisak Rintalak, who was killed back on October 7th. But the body of the last known Israeli hostage, Sergeant Ranjvili, is still in Gaza.
And once these returns are done, the U.S.-backed plan is supposed to kick in, but the goals, they seem almost impossibly large.
They're monumental. The plan calls for, first, an international stabilization force.
Which raises a million questions. Who pays for it? Who mans it?
Whose interests does it serve? Exactly. Then there's the formation of a technocratic Palestinian administration.
And what does technocratic even mean there?
It implies, a government of non-political experts focused just on stability. Not Hamas, not their rivals, but creating that, getting everyone to accept it. It's a huge challenge. And finally, the goal is the disarmament of Hamas.
All three of those steps require a level of global and regional unity that just it doesn't exist.
It absolutely does not exist. The truce is just the very first, very small step on an incredibly long road.
Okay, let's take a quick thematic sidestep here to look at two other updates. They seem unrelated, but they're both about applying political pressure, either through transparency or through history. Let's start with Jeffrey Epstein's island.
Right. So House Democrats just released a batch of photos and videos from Little St. James, taken back in 2020. This wasn't about revealing new crimes, but it was about providing a very disturbing visual record.
And some of the details are clearly designed to be unsettling. We see bedrooms, a phone, but then a room with a dentist chair, masks on the wall.
And a chalkboard with words like deception, intellectual, and power written on it.
And the timing on this is no accident.
Not at all. It's described as an effort to maintain public and political pressure on the Trump administration. There's a December 19th deadline for the Department of Justice to release a bunch of related files, so this is about keeping the story in the public eye, using shocking images to force a political hand.
Now, let's contrast that with a very different kind of information warfare, this one from Russia, using a historical claim for a modern narrative.
This is a fascinating one. Russia's FSB announced the arrest of 3 people, including a Ukrainian serviceman.
Chingiz Savchenko.
Right, and they're accused of taking part in an attack way back in 2000 on the 6th Pskov company in Chechnya.
That battle is legendary in Russia. 84 out of 90 elite paratroopers were killed.
It's a foundational myth of the modern Russian military, and this criminal case has just been running and running for decades.
And now, more than 2 decades later, they arrest a Ukrainian serviceman for it.
Exactly. It's a blatant attempt to link their current enemy, Ukraine, to this historical trauma, to paint Ukraine as a long-standing threat aligned with, violent terrorists.
But there's a counter-narrative here, a really important one.
There is. Many researchers who've studied the Chechen wars argue this whole case is a cover-up. They allege the company wasn't killed by militants, but by friendly fire.
An artillery bombardment from their own side due to negligence.
If that's true and there's evidence to support it, then these ongoing arrests aren't about justice. They're about constantly reinforcing the heroic myth to avoid admitting to a catastrophic military failure. Both the Epstein photos and these FSB arrests are, at their core, about controlling a narrative for political gain.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So let's try to put all these pieces back together. What does it all mean? You have Europe tied up in knots, feeling excluded, while Russia is busy building powerful new alliances in Asia, making this multipolar world a reality. And all the while, these localized fires, like in Gaza, are just a hair trigger away from exploding and demanding global attention that's already stretched so thin.
And if you zoom out, you see this deeply contradictory diplomacy everywhere. On one hand, you have Europe considering this incredibly aggressive financial move, a $100 billion loan, using frozen Russian assets to fund a war.
Right.
And on the other hand, you have leaders like Macron flying to Beijing, basically trying to secure peace negotiations that undermine the entire Western effort. The whole system is pulling in opposite directions at once.
It's an incredibly delicate and complicated landscape, which leads to, I think, a really big question for you, the listener, to think about. Considering this intense European frustration, leaders feeling humiliated by being excluded from peace talks, what happens to the whole idea of collective security when the main players at the table, the U.S. and Russia, seem to be finding some common ground, leaving the countries most affected feeling totally isolated?
That's a huge question. And on that note, thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the state of global fragmentation.
We'll see you next time.